August 2006. What are you doing, Ianto? Tosh, who had come in unusually early that morning to continue with the research on the plane from the 50s, hurried across to her workstation as she saw Ianto Jones bending over it. He said to leave it, but I can't, Ianto confessed, pain engraved deeply into the lines on his face. Tosh, I know that Jack called me out, told me not to bother with Mallory any longer. I know he thinks that I'm still obsessed with Lisa. Are you? Tosh asked, but more gently than she intended. I still miss her, he told Tosh. But I just feel if I can help Mallory Owen has helped her with her headaches But if there is anything that I can do to help put things right for her. Tosh laid a hand on his shoulder. I'll help, she promised him. But, right now, coffee? She asked, her eyes sparkling. We have the pressing issue of 3 people from a different time to help, which, Tosh added, as Ianto straightened up and looked towards the inner door mechanism as a very tired-looking Owen stepped through, certainly in need of coffee. From what I can see, one of them definitely got helped. Shut it, Owen griped, grumpily. But Tosh was not wrong. With Mallory, Ianto concluded, as he walked towards the door. There's just something more to her than Jack's letting on. 88,888,888 August 2018/Roddy, love. Gwen, usually an early riser, had decided to get up an hour earlier still, to wait for the boy, who was up before her. But Roddy Collier was sitting in one of the Williams' armchairs, as if waiting for her, and this threw her for a second. Yes. And then she saw the kitchen, drawers pulled out, cutlery in disarray, plates out of cupboards, tea towels all over the floor. Gwen moved over to it, surveying the mess, and then looked back to Roddy. What's happened, Roddy? Gwen asked carefully, stalking back towards him, warily. Did you make that mess? Yes, he told her. Then I suggest, but Reese had crossed the living room, prepared to be as outraged as his wife had been, and laid out to the strange boy that they had been landed with. But then he noticed something. Did you do this? He asked, looking between the cooker and Roddy. Gwen looked at her husband, and then back to Roddy, making some tentative gestures towards it, before clicking the ignition and turning on the gas. But, Reese began, then looked at his wife. It wouldn't work without the timer. But, and he watched as the gas ignited in the oven. Gwen looked across to her husband. Guess he mended it. Gwen and Reese looked across the breakfast bar. I mended it, Roddy confirmed, which was important, for the boy used words as if he paid for each one with a bar of gold. Gwen crossed the carpet towards him. Do you know how long you are here for? She asked. Roddy shook his head. From the kitchen, Reese peered, listening to his wife talk to the strange boy they had suddenly been landed with. My father said I was coming somewhere safe, he told her, his chocolate-colored eyes analyzing her own. And you weren't safe before? Roddy bent his head. I miss him, David. I wish he could be here. But father said he could not. Gwen looked back over her shoulder at Reese, who was busy inspecting the cooker. She looked back, as a creak upstairs indicated that Anwin was getting up. Did he say anything else? Roddy was still staring at her. He said it was the butterfly effect. What was? Roddy glanced towards the door, as Anwin Williams opened it. What he had to deal with, and he had to take David away from me until it was sorted out. I miss David, he added, his face mournful. And David is. Roddy glanced down. In second-hand jeans and an old t-shirt of Anwin's, the boy seemed like a little stray. A strange little stray who seemingly had the ability to mend electrical equipment. And the cooker? Roddy slowly turned his head towards the kitchen, as Reese, who now had a whole leg of lamb out on the draining board, grinned at their cooker like a child at Christmas. Anwin crossed the carpet, and flopped down on the next chair to Roddy. I would have done it sooner if we had been closer to the rift. 88,888,888 October 2006. You didn't come back. Mallory looked at Owen as the door opened, then flounced off into the kitchen. And good evening to you, Owen replied, sarcastically as he stepped through the open door of Torchwood 4. It snapped shut behind him, and he turned sharply. Censor, he told himself. In fact, Hadn't it opened by itself? Genetic identifier, with visitor predicton. She called back through to him. On an old step stool, Mallory sat down, her hands in her hair, rubbing at her scalp through her fingertips. She looked up through her hair, tears forming in her eyes, which she rubbed away with the back of her hand as Owen stood at the kitchen door. Not too crazy clothes today, he thought. Was she to know that flared boot-cut trousers and dresses over the top were actually back in fashion? This hasn't helped. Mallory snapped at him, then nursed her own head again. It did, for a while. But now. She leaned against the kitchen table. I have tried to do my work. People depending on me can't concentrate. And the pitiful situation of that. The woman stirred an ounce of compassion in the arrogant doctor. He placed a hand on her shoulder, and left it there even when Mallory flinched. Because it takes time and you to rest. Come, Owen encouraged. Perhaps, if you showed me what you are working on. Mallory picked up her head, and wobbled for a second, unsteady on her feet, and Owen took her arm. Hey, watch it, he told her, and Mallory gave him a rare smile. She took him through to her living room, leisure from decades past interspersed with multifaceted metatech. He looked at the desk, which seemed to be full of alien technology, her own devices, all beyond the reach of anyone else. And, as Mallory took up what looked like a bendy straw, but in a kind of polymer which suddenly seemed to spring to life, he saw a picture of a young man in a frame. Was it Mark? Owen felt a pang in his chest. It hurt, being without Diane, and his mind wandered to how she had felt. Had she cared for him as Owen had cared for her? When you work, what do you do? Asked Owen, suddenly. Mallory turned and tried to smile, as a headache attacked her head then, and she flinched, hand to skull. When it passed, she opened her eyes, and nodded to her desk. I fix things, I make things. Yeah, but, you know, how? When you do it, how does it feel? Mallory looked at Owen's face. What an amazing question to ask. Like I am with it, living with it, nothing else matters. She wandered around the living room, touching one device, looking at another gadget. Owen knew that even if he spent the rest of his life at Torchwood 4, he would not be able to understand half of what Mallory was working on. Hours go by which feel like minutes, she added, picking up what looked like a dug eye. That will be it, Owen told her, nodding slowly. There is a limit to your body's capabilities of enduring this. Your work is taking its toll. Jack told them that, months ago. Now Owen could really see it. You are different, he told Mallory. So, he continued, when you had the injection, how did it feel? They are not gone, but they aren't as often, Mallory told him. And then she approached Owen and raised a hand to his face. You look different, from when you came last. And Owen found himself telling Mallory about Diane, about her arriving, about him falling in love with her, how she had left. And, as he talked, Owen realized that it was good, really good, to offload to someone who understood about Torchwood business. I couldn't help the plane, Mallory thought to herself. It would do no good to tell him that he would not understand. It was that, or something far, far worse. 3 lives, or millions. Jack did not send you, Mallory continued. Owen shook his head, sharply. I wanted to check on you, he lied. I cannot see you, Mallory told him, suddenly. I mustn't. I must endure. For Torchwood. Why would she say that? Unless ... Jack. May I put in the radio? Mallory looked abashed. That sometimes helps. Owen listened, as he looked at a jar containing pink liquid, and what looked like a reptile languishing at the bottom. It was only after a few minutes he realized it was music from the 40s. Owen recognized it from every war film he had seen. Haven't you got anything modern? Looking abashed, Mallory tuned the radio again. This time she picked up Radio 1. As Britney Spears came over the airwaves, Owen relaxed. That was his sort of thing. It was some time before he realized she was staring at him. Very ... interesting, she told him, when he narrowed his eyes. And then a song came on that she knew. ... Everything I do it for you. And she turned, and ran out of the living room. What just happened, Mallory? Owen said, in a calmer voice than he thought he would use. She was sitting at the edge of her bed, fingers in her hair again, bent over, staring at her knees. Mallory turned at his voice, and this time, he saw her face, red, tear-streaked. He sat beside her. "All I want," Mallory told him, "all I've ever wanted, was to be like other people." She turned away when he reached for her arm. Torchwood ... It's just what I inherited. Then her thoughts turned to Archie McLeish. He told her she needn't carry on. Getting married to him seemed like a sensible thing, to Mallory. No more headaches, no more rift. "Just for once," she added, as Owen waited beside her patiently. "I can mimic them, but that's exhausting. And it's never me. I just want to be free of unit." Owen asked, thinking about the infamous Bryan Adams song. Had it been their song? Mallory's and Mark's? At the name of that organization, Mallory turned sore eyes on Owen. "They are the enemy. My husband Mark infiltrated me to get at the secrets of Torchwood, to get at my mother. Jack ... stopped him in time." Mallory got to her feet and walked to the window. A beautiful autumn sun lit her face. "You loved Diane, I loved Mark ... or at least ... I think I did." "Unit killed him?" Owen could not help himself. She was sharing, he was prompting. Mallory turned to look at him. "He chose to betray me himself. And when the rift made him ill ... I cared for him." She looked at Owen. "Even if she left you again in the end, if Diane had become ill, would you have cared for her?" "I don't know that I could have done anything else," Owen replied. Then, a thought occurred to him. "I have an idea," he told her. "For the headaches, I know something that just might help. Come here." He patted the bed where he was sitting. Cautiously, Mallory approached him. "That's it," he said to her. "Feet up and, oh, no matter," he added, when Mallory pulled off her clothes. It would be easier, he decided, without clothes in the way. Owen knelt on the floor beside the naked Mallory, and put a hand on her stomach. "Old doctor's trick," he added. "Just ... feel this, Mallory." "No," he cautioned. "Look up to the ceiling. Don't think about anything else. Just my hand and your feelings." And there was an afterwards. Torchwood 3's doctor could not help but watch her body, in spite of himself. "Well?" Owen asked, watching her face. "Well, it felt." Mallory trailed off, raising a hand to her head. The pain seemed to have lessened, after all. "Good?" Owen prompted. "Please say it felt good." "Was it supposed to feel like that?" Mallory asked. "Yes," Owen told her. "Again?" Mallory looked thoughtful. "Yes, again." As he relieved the tension in the woman once more, a strain began in his boxers. Owen cursed inwardly at the inconvenience of having to stop at the motorway services again.